Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to another enterprise conversation. I'm Tierney Severin, and today I'm joined by Szasza Palmer at Switch Media. Szasza, do you want to introduce yourself a bit?
First of all, thank you very much for having me here. I'm Szasza Palmer, a software architect at Switch Media, a media delivery provider company from Australia.
Awesome. Well, that's a great way to get started. So can you tell us a bit more about Switch Media and what you do at Switch Media?
Sure, absolutely, happy to. Switch Media, as I mentioned, a media delivery provider company who provides various services across the broadcasting and the video on-demand industry. We provide products as well as client-specific solutions. Products include a content management platform, server-side ad insertion, capturing, encoding, and publishing live streaming video content, for example, and ensuring that our clients can deliver it on any platform they want. For example, HPP TVs, mobile applications, consoles, on-demand video sites, really whatever they prefer. Yep.
Awesome. And I'm curious what you do at Switch Media as well.
My role as a software architect is pretty much helping in designing software and infrastructure architecture for high-load, high-availability services, and provide reference implementations, participate in code reviews, and organizing brown bag sessions for sharing knowledge in the industry. That's pretty much it on high level.
Awesome. Cool. And so kind of on that, I'm curious how Switch and how you use Node.js.
In regards of Node.js, we use it mainly on the backend side of things. So in regards of backend, how our infrastructure or architecture looks like is that we have some core services which are pretty much product agnostic, if you may. And those services are sometimes stateful, sometimes stateless. And these core services are being combined in various ways to fulfill either product needs or client needs. In regards of Node.js, we use it as kind of like an API gateway. Mm-hmm. So because the Node.js cluster gets a serious amount of hits across the country or across multiple countries, we need to be sure that this happens in a graceful way and that the requests themselves don't get blocked in any way, because then scalability will quickly become an issue. So literally how it looks like is that we use a Node.js based application called Express Gateway to fulfill these huge amounts of requests. Gotcha.
So I'm curious, in addition to Express Gateway, what some of your stack is, to build this out, and like both on the infrastructure side and also the application tooling side.
Sorry, could you please repeat that?
Yeah. So, on the side of infrastructure and on the side of, the modules and other code you're using, I'm curious what some of the tools you use are. So, like Express, or, if you're deploying with Docker and Kubernetes, or, that kind of thing.
I see. So technically how it looks like is that our Node.js cluster is deployed into containers, and the containers themselves are built via Docker as such, and we deploy it to AWS. Gotcha.
Cool. Awesome. And so on that, I'm curious, why did you actually choose Node.js? What were the benefits that kind of led you down the path of selecting Node?
Yes. So how it looks like is that literally we just went with a problem. So a problem first approach. We had a problem, whereas we knew that we will get a serious amount of load in our services. And we started evaluating various solutions in this regard. And some solutions were more feasible than others, but literally it was Node.js which provided us the flexibility to handle high amount of load, to fulfill a high amount of requests in a relatively small amount of resources as such, in regards of server resources. And there were multiple API gateway implementations which we trialed, and Express Gateway was the one that literally fulfilled our needs in the most graceful way.
Gotcha. Awesome. And so on that, I'm curious how using Node has actually been beneficial to Switch Media.
Well, it has been beneficial in multiple ways. So in one way, or in not in one way, in multiple ways, obviously. But one of the most important ways was that it actually managed to fulfill a load that we haven't even anticipated as such. So that being said, we have only rolled it out in 2 services up until this point in production, and at its peak, it handles more than 15,000 requests per minute.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's a good metric.
Yeah, which is actually pretty good, because technically how it looks like is that our Node.js cluster is completely stateless. So requests come in, the requests got split up into multiple subsequent requests via promises. Then these get fulfilled. When they get fulfilled, they may fire up other ones, and so on and so forth. So actually, in the backend, the amount of requests gets multiplied by like 5 maybe.
Gotcha.
And that being said, due to Node's nature of being having a non-blocking request handling, this actually, via this, we managed to roll out in a way that the initial estimations of how much resources we'll need were actually pretty much nearly spot on, because that cluster does not really need to scale up. Gotcha.
So you mentioned that you were using promises to kind of fulfill the requests. I'm curious, one of the things that I've seen most commonly is people stumbling on error handling with promises, and kind of catching promises that fail. So I'm curious how you're handling that, and kind of if you have any suggestions or tips for people who might be watching who aren't necessarily doing that effectively.
Right. So how our error handling has been solved in this regard is that one of the big problems that people usually meet in regards of implementation of microservices is that people like to keep their APIs nice and clean and RESTful. The problem with that is that if there is a more complex operation, that can easily result in multiple REST API calls. Now, transaction handling in regards of REST APIs is not necessarily a trivial problem to solve. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it can easily happen that, for example, let's say I want to create 3 entities in one request, just for the sake of simplicity on the client side. And the API gateway, for example, Node, splits that up into multiple, let's say, core service calls. What happens if 2 succeeds and 1 fails? You need to roll it back somehow. So literally how our error handling works is that if there is just like a standard read error handling, then we go for the robust solution, such as we retry the operation, because it can easily happen that it was just an intermittent problem, and then return the response. Now, if it's a kind of like a data write operation, where we actually have to, for example, send multiple writes to various services and then some of them fail, then we use promises. And in regards of promises, we just capture the responses. And if just one of the responses fails for any reason, we retry. But if it fails multiple times, then we literally just create a stack of the successful operations, rollback operations, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And then if we just can't push the operation through, then we just literally call the rollback operations one after the other in reverse order. And that's pretty much it.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's a beautiful solution, but it works.
Awesome. Well, I mean, yeah, that's one of the hardest things in recent times with Node.js is promises and kind of error handling there. So it seems like you have at least a robust solution. So that's good. But, kind of on that, I'm curious, moving forward, how you're actually going to be using Node.js, and, if you're looking to expand into using it for more things across your platform.
Sure. So apart from using Node.js for an API gateway purpose, we also use Node.js in AWS Lambda. So so we just use it for more probably simpler solutions. For example, processing data streams that come from Kinesis and then pushing it somewhere else. Probably this is the direction where we will use Node.js more and more, depending on what services will need it. And in regards of the current Node.js stack that we have, we will just go down on the path of creating more and more Express Gateway plugins, which in Node.js, again, depending on what our clients' needs will be.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, we've come to the end of our topics. So I wanted to close up and thank you for coming and joining us for an enterprise discussion, Szasza.
Well, thank you very much for having me here.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye, everyone.